My family held a meeting about what to do with me behind my back, so I vanished that night. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. I came back home because I had no choice. After losing my job and my apartment, the Lang house in Virginia was the only place left that didn't charge rent. Mom sounded sweet on the phone, almost relieved. Of course, Harper. You can stay as long as you need. But when I arrived, something felt off, like the air had already been stirred by conversations I wasn't part of. Dinner was quiet, almost rehearsed. Dad asked about my plans in that vague, careful tone. Claire scrolled through her phone the whole time, pretending not to listen. Mom served the roast chicken, then asked if I'd been taking care of myself, like I was a patient instead of a person. Every word felt like it had been pre-approved. When I went to the kitchen for more water, I heard laughter from the dining room. Then it stopped, quick and sharp. The scrape of silverware followed. When I came back, no one looked at me. Later that night, brushing my teeth, I caught my name through the study door. Mom's voice, low but urgent. We have to decide what to do with Harper. The words hit different than they should have. Not worried. Not kind. Just organized. Like I was an item on a list. I stood there listening, heart pounding. Dad mumbled something, his usual tone of agreement. Claire's voice was softer, almost bored. Then the sound of paper sliding across the desk. I couldn't make out much else, but I didn't need to. The message was clear enough. Back in my room, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I misheard. Maybe they were talking about a job, a loan, anything but me. But sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept replaying that phrase. What to do with Harper? Like I wasn't a person anymore, just a responsibility they regretted inheriting. Around midnight, I gave up trying to rest and went downstairs. The house was dark except for the light under the study door. When I pushed it open, no one was there. Just the smell of Mom's perfume and the faint hum of the desk lamp. And there it was, a manila folder in the center of the table, perfectly aligned. The label typed neatly across the top. Family meeting, Harper. I froze. My name looked wrong in print, too final. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just stared, the silence thick around me. The folder didn't belong to me, but somehow it felt like it contained my whole life. When I finally backed away, the air felt different, thinner, colder. Upstairs, the house creaked like it knew a secret I wasn't supposed to hear. And as I lay awake, watching the ceiling blur in the dark, one thought kept circling back, quiet but certain. Something was about to change. The next morning, the house felt too quiet. I waited until I was sure everyone had left, Mom running errands, Dad at his office, and Claire out showing some house. Sunlight came through the window, landing on the carpet in pale stripes. My heart beat steady, but my stomach felt tight as I walked down the hall toward the study. The door was slightly open. The same folder sat on the desk, right where I had seen it last night. I stood there for a moment, thinking maybe I should leave it alone. But curiosity, or maybe fear, pushed me forward. I sat down, opened the cover, and started to read. At the top of the first page was a heading, Family Meeting Agenda. Underneath were 3 short bullet points. Option 1, sell Harper's share. Option 2, move Harper into supervised care. Option 3, use emergency clause of trust. My name on that paper didn't feel like my name. It looked like a word for someone else, someone they wanted to handle quietly. I flipped to the next page. Beside each point were little notes in neat handwriting. Talk to Graham for legal process. Doctor's recommendation may be required. Avoid public notice. My throat tightened. They were not only talking about me, they were already planning what to do with my money, my home, my life. And worse, I realized it wasn't a discussion. It was a decision. On the last page, I saw my own signature. For a moment I thought maybe I had signed it a long time ago, something I'd forgotten. But no. The handwriting was too clean, the lines too smooth. It looked like mine, but not quite. Someone had forged it. My stomach turned cold. I didn't hear Claire come in until her voice broke the silence. You were never supposed to see that. I turned around slowly. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing that faint smirk she always used when she thought she was smarter than me. What is this? I asked, holding the folder. My voice didn't sound like mine. She stepped closer, her heels clicking on the floor. It's just business, Harper. Mom's trying to make sure things don't fall apart. By stealing from me? I said. Claire sighed, like she was tired of explaining. You weren't exactly doing much with your life. Mom just wants to protect what's left. Protect. That word made me laugh, quiet and bitter. There was nothing protective about what I'd read. They weren't helping me, they were getting rid of me. I closed the folder and stood up. Claire's smirk didn't fade. She thought she'd won, that I'd fold the way I always did. But I didn't say another word. I walked past her, down the hallway, and out the back door. The air outside was cool, and I could still feel the paper in my hands, even though I'd left it behind. Every word I'd read was burned into my head. My family hadn't just turned against me, they'd already written me off. I didn't wait for morning. The air in that house felt wrong, heavy, like it was pressing me out of place. I kept hearing Claire's voice in my head, calm and certain, like she was the one who owned my future. I knew if I stayed another night, they'd make their next move. So I made mine first. When everyone was asleep, I started packing. I didn't bother turning on the light. I knew what I needed, just a few clothes, my ID, and the little cash I still had hidden in my wallet. My suitcase would make too much noise, so I found an old duffel in the closet. Every sound felt louder than it should have been. The zip of the bag, the creak of the floorboards, my own breathing. I kept stopping, waiting to hear footsteps, but the house stayed silent. My phone was on the nightstand, glowing with a faint light. I picked it up, thought about taking it, then put it back down. It felt like a leash, something they could trace, something that still tied me to them. Instead, I took a sheet of paper from my notebook and wrote one line. You can decide what to do with my things, but not with me. I folded it and left it on the pillow. Downstairs, I paused at the front door. The smell of furniture polish and the faint tick of the clock filled the air. I remembered every fight, every time I was told to be grateful, to trust the family. My hands shook as I turned the handle, but I didn't look back. The night outside was cold enough to sting my face. The grass was damp with dew, the driveway shining under the streetlight. I walked fast, my duffel over my shoulder, the wind biting through my jacket. I didn't have a plan, only the clear thought that I wasn't staying there another day. At the edge of town, I found a gas station still open. I bought a bus ticket with what little cash I had left and waited inside, pretending to read a magazine while my heart thudded against my ribs. Every person who walked past made me flinch, but no one looked twice at me. A few hours later, I got off in a small city 2 hours away. The streets were empty, the lights buzzing overhead. I walked until I found a cheap motel with flickering letters that spelled out vacancy. The man at the counter didn't ask questions. I signed a fake name, handed over $60, and took the key. The room smelled like dust and old smoke. The curtains were thin, the carpet stained, but it was mine. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall, trying to catch my breath. My hands still trembled, but the fear was fading. I thought about the folder, the meeting, the lies, and then I felt something new. Not peace, not yet. Just a small spark of control. They wanted to choose for me, to decide my life without asking. I whispered into the quiet room. They made their plans. Now I'll make mine. The first few days after I left felt endless. I kept moving between small towns, never staying long enough for anyone to remember my face. My money was running out fast, and I needed something that paid cash, no questions asked. After 2 nights of searching, I found a cleaning job. The pay was low, but it was enough to keep a roof over my head. The night shift suited me. The offices were empty, and the silence gave me time to think. I mopped floors, emptied trash cans, and tried not to think about what my family might be doing. Still, the thought crept in. They were probably living the same as before, comfortable, pretending nothing had happened. That idea pushed me to start digging. When I got my first paycheck, I used part of it at the public library. They had computers, free internet, and no one asked for an address. I started searching my name, the trust fund, and anything linked to my parents or Uncle Graham. At first, there was nothing unusual. But the deeper I went, the more pieces started connecting in strange ways. I found property records, business filings, and legal documents that all mentioned the Lang family trust. Every time Graham's name appeared beside a transfer or a sale, a chill ran down my spine. The dates went back years, long before I moved back home. My trust fund had been touched dozens of times, each time in small amounts that wouldn't draw attention. I wrote everything down in a small notebook I bought from a dollar store. On the front cover, I printed 2 words in black ink. They decided. Page after page filled up with names, numbers, and notes. It became my way of keeping calm. Every fact I found made me feel less powerless. One night, while taking a break in the janitor's closet, I searched local news online. A headline stopped me. Family seeks missing daughter. There was my picture, an old one from years ago, smiling unaware. The article said I'd been gone for over a week and that my parents were heartbroken. The quote from my mother made me want to throw the computer across the room. She said I had been struggling emotionally and that the family just wanted her safe. Then came the video. My mother sat beside my father, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, her voice trembling as she begged for my return. I recognized that performance. She'd done the same act when she wanted sympathy from neighbors. Beside her, Claire looked serious, her jaw set, as if she was holding back tears. But I knew that expression. It wasn't sadness. It was fear. I turned off the video and sat in the dark for a while. They weren't searching for me because they missed me. They were covering themselves, building a story that made them look innocent. Maybe they thought guilt would pull me back. It had the opposite effect. Watching their lies play out on a screen made me certain of one thing. I wasn't done. They thought I'd disappeared for good. But I was still here, cleaning offices at night, gathering every small piece of truth. They had taken my trust, my money, and my voice. Now, I was going to take back the story they stole. It had been almost a month since I left home. I'd gotten used to keeping my head down, shopping late, walking with my hood up, never staying in one place too long. The grocery store near the motel was open all night, and I liked it that way. Fewer eyes, fewer questions. That night, I was standing in line with bread, instant soup, and cheap coffee when I heard someone behind me say my name softly. Not loud, just enough to freeze me. I didn't turn around right away. My first thought was that my family had found me. My heart started racing. "Harper," the voice said again. It sounded familiar, warmer, steadier than I expected. I turned and saw Jonah Reed. I hadn't seen him in years, not since we were kids catching frogs near the creek behind our old school. He looked the same, just older, messy hair, tired eyes, the kind of face that still carried trust. For a second, neither of us spoke. I could tell he recognized the fear on my face because his expression softened. "It's okay," he said quietly. "I'm not calling anyone." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, paid for my groceries, and walked out. He followed me at a distance, not close enough to scare me, just enough to make sure I didn't disappear again. Outside, the parking lot lights buzzed overhead. He stopped a few steps away. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said, "but if you need somewhere safe for a while, I can help." I wanted to say no. Trusting anyone felt dangerous. But something about his tone broke through my guard. I ended up following him to a small apartment above a repair shop. It was old but clean. He handed me a spare key without asking questions. The next morning, he brought me a prepaid phone and a cup of coffee. "Use this," he said. "No one can trace it. And my cousin works at the county recorder's office. If you tell me what you're looking for, maybe he can dig a little." At first, I hesitated, then told him everything. How my family had drained the trust fund and forged papers. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Then we'll find the proof." Over the next few nights, we worked quietly. Jonah's cousin sent over scanned records, property deeds, transaction reports, and internal notes. My uncle's name appeared again and again beside my trust. Transfers marked as authorized, but never signed by me. It was worse than I expected. We filled the table with papers, highlighting dates, cross-checking numbers. Each document made the truth clearer. They had built their comfort from my future. Jonah leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "They really did this to you? They think I'll let them get away with it," I said. He studied me for a moment. "You're not going to forgive them, are you?" I looked down at the folder between us, at the lies written in official ink. "Forgiveness," I said quietly, "is what they count on. Not this time." Jonah didn't say anything else. He just nodded once, like he understood. Outside, the city was still, but for the first time since I ran, I didn't feel alone. Days turned into weeks as Jonah and I worked quietly, careful not to draw attention. We used his cousin's access at the county office to pull more documents, records hidden deep in old files. I learned how to read financial forms, compare signatures, and track where every dollar had gone. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. This wasn't just greed. It was a full plan carried out over years. One night, Jonah slid a folder toward me across the kitchen table. "You need to see this," he said. Inside were scanned copies of legal papers, my name printed across each page. The signatures looked like mine, but they weren't. Every curve, every letter had been copied too perfectly. They'd practiced. "These are from the trust office," Jonah said. "Someone used your identity to approve multiple transfers." I stared at the pages, my stomach twisting. So, they took everything and made it look like I agreed. He nodded. That's what it looks like. We kept digging, following the paper trail through property records. That's when I found it, the sale of my grandmother's house. I had always believed I owned a small share of it. She left it to me in her will. But months after she passed, my name had been removed. A sale went through under my mother's signature and Uncle Graham's approval. The money disappeared into one of their joint accounts. After that, nothing surprised me anymore. We even found that a loan had been taken out using my credit history. The borrower's name was Evelyn Lang. My mother. By the time we finished sorting the evidence, I was no longer angry, I was focused. Every lie was now a piece of proof. Every signature, every forged document, every missing dollar would tell the story they had tried to hide. Jonah leaned back and looked at me. You've got enough to go to the police, he said. Not yet, I replied. They'll just deny it. I need them to panic first. The next morning, I printed copies of the clearest documents. No names, no explanations, just the parts that mattered. I mailed one envelope to the family's accountant and another to the state ethics board. Each letter had no return address, only a note that read, "Review the Lang accounts. Urgent discrepancies found." Then we waited. It didn't take long. Within days, news started to leak. Jonah found a local gossip column online mentioning unverified claims about a well-known family. Then my mother's social media disappeared overnight. Claire stopped posting pictures from her real estate showings. My father was seen leaving a bar midday, looking pale and disheveled. Jonah smirked when he showed me the article. Looks like you shook the hive. I didn't smile. It's only the beginning. From the outside, their life was still polished. But inside, the cracks were spreading. I knew my mother. Fear would eat her faster than guilt. She would start questioning everyone around her. Claire would get defensive, Graham would scramble to cover his tracks, and my father would drink to stay quiet. I didn't need to confront them yet. They would destroy each other without my help. All I had to do was wait and keep collecting. Every day, another small piece of their world fell apart, and for once, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. Months passed before I went back. By then, my hair was shorter, my clothes were simple, and no one would have guessed who I was. Jonah helped me get new papers with a different name. I had thought about that day for weeks. The day I'd face them not as their daughter, but as someone they couldn't control anymore. Through my digging, I found out they were selling another property, one that still had ties to the trust. It was the perfect chance to show up without them suspecting a thing. The sale was happening through a local title company. Jonah knew someone who could get me in as a temporary notary assistant. I didn't hesitate. The morning of the meeting, I dressed carefully. Plain blazer, dark slacks, no makeup. Just another office worker there to check signatures. My new ID read Anna Reed. When I arrived, the receptionist waved me in. The conference room smelled of coffee and stress. Papers were stacked high, and the buyers sat nervously waiting. I sat up quietly at the corner of the table, keeping my head down. Then the door opened. Claire walked in first, confident as always, heels clicking on the tile. She was followed by Uncle Graham, holding a thick folder, and my mother a few steps behind him. Their laughter filled the room until Claire turned her head and saw me. Her steps faltered. For a moment, she couldn't move. I looked straight at her. Her face went pale, the kind of white that doesn't come from surprise. It comes from fear. "Is everything all right?" one of the buyers asked, glancing between us. Claire forced a smile. "Yes. Just thought I recognized someone." I stood slowly, holding a folder of my own. "You probably do," I said. My voice stayed calm even. I placed the folder in front of her. "You should have checked the math on your own fraud." The room went silent. My mother's hand trembled. Graham reached for the folder, but I pulled it back before he could touch it. "Don't bother," I said. "Copies are already with the district attorney." He froze, blinking hard. "You don't know what you're talking about," he muttered. I tilted my head. "I know exactly what I'm talking about. Every signature, every transfer, every cent you thought was buried." The buyers stood up. One of them whispered something about needing to reschedule. They gathered their things and left quickly, leaving the family and me alone in that room. My mother finally spoke, her voice shaking. "Harper, what have you done?" "What you forced me to," I said. "You wanted to make decisions for me. Now I'm making one for you." Graham tried to keep his composure, but his hands gave him away. Claire avoided my eyes completely. For the first time, they looked small, trapped by their own lies. I didn't stay longer than I needed to. I left the building quietly, walking out into the sunlight. My hands were steady. Behind me, I could still hear raised voices through the glass walls. Panic, blame, and denial. For the first time since I'd left home, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt visible again. And the people who once decided my fate finally knew what it felt like to lose control. It didn't take long for the storm to hit. Within a week of the failed property sale, the authorities started asking questions. Jonah and I watched the news every evening, waiting for my family's faces to appear, and eventually they did. The report said that the Lang family was under investigation for financial misconduct. Hearing it out loud felt strange, like the story finally belonged to the truth instead of to their lies. A few days later, I received a message from a local detective named Rosa Mendez. She wanted to meet in person. I agreed and chose a quiet cafe on the edge of town. When she arrived, she didn't look like the cops you see on TV. No suit, no badge showing, just a calm woman with tired eyes and a notebook. "Harper Lang?" she asked. I nodded. She sat across from me. "You've given us quite a file. Most people don't come this prepared." I passed her a small envelope filled with the last few documents we'd uncovered. Bank statements, forged contracts, even an audio recording Jonah had managed to capture during the property meeting. "They thought I'd never fight back," I said. They were wrong. Detective Mendez went through the pages, her brow tightening with every turn. "You realize this could lead to real prison time for them," she said quietly. "I'm aware," I replied. She looked at me for a long time before speaking again. "You've been careful. Smart. But this kind of betrayal, it leaves marks. Are you sure you're ready to watch this unfold?" "I've already watched them take everything," I said. "I can handle the rest." The following week, the investigation became public. My mother, father, and Uncle Graham were called in for questioning. Claire's name appeared on several documents too, though she kept trying to distance herself. Reporters surrounded their house. Cameras flashed as they walked out, pretending nothing was wrong. Evelyn tried to take control of the story, of course. She claimed she was misled by Graham, that she never knew the full truth. She cried in front of reporters, said she had only wanted to protect me, that I had gone missing and wasn't well. But the paperwork didn't lie. Every signature, every transaction, every detail lined up perfectly. When investigators matched handwriting samples, the forgery was undeniable. Graham's hands were all over it, but Evelyn had approved the withdrawals. Claire had signed documents she claimed not to remember. Detective Mendez called me again. "They're cornered," she said. "Your evidence did the work." For a long time, I didn't know what to feel. Relief wasn't the right word. It was quieter than that, something close to balance. When Evelyn was finally confronted by reporters outside the courthouse, someone asked her if she regretted anything. She straightened her jacket, looked straight into the camera, and said, "We did what we had to." She was unstable. I watched it live on TV from Jonah's apartment. He looked at me, waiting to see if I'd get angry. I didn't. Instead, I smiled for the first time in months. "Not unstable," I whispered. "Unstoppable." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "They'll never see it coming." And for once, I didn't feel like the victim in their story. I was the one who wrote the ending. News about my family spread fast. Their names were everywhere, on local TV, in the papers, even online forums that loved a scandal. The Lang family, once known for their clean image and polished smiles, had become a cautionary tale. Every story used the same words: fraud, forgery, embezzlement. Seeing those words beside their faces felt unreal, but it also meant the truth was finally louder than their lies. Uncle Graham was the first to fall. The state board suspended his license before the investigation even ended. His law office shut down within days, the sign taken off the door. I heard he tried to convince people he was only following orders, but no one believed him. His name had been on too many papers to deny it. Claire's downfall came next. Her clients started canceling contracts after her name appeared in the reports. No one wanted to buy a house from someone linked to financial crimes. Her company's website vanished, and her smiling ads disappeared from bus stops. I saw a picture online of her leaving her office with a box of files. For someone who once looked untouchable, she suddenly looked small. Then there was my mother. Evelyn had always cared about appearances. Every outfit, every word carefully chosen. But when the bills started piling up, appearances couldn't save her. The legal fees, the fines, and the frozen accounts forced her to sell the house she loved more than the people inside it. The same house where they'd held that family meeting about me now sat empty, its front gate chained shut. My father tried to stay quiet through all of it. He never spoke to the press, never appeared in court, just followed along behind my mother as if her shadow had swallowed him. One evening, I received a short message from an unknown number. It was from him. "I'm sorry for what happened. We should have protected you." I stared at the screen for a long time, but I didn't answer. The words were too late. His silence when I needed him had said enough. Jonah found me sitting by the window that night. He placed a cup of coffee beside me and said, "It's over. You're free now." I wanted to believe him. I nodded and even smiled a little, but the feeling didn't match the moment. The anger had faded, the fear was gone, yet something inside me still felt hollow. Revenge had fixed the facts, but not the memories. For weeks, I watched the chaos from a distance, news updates, court rulings, and auction listings. Everything they'd built on lies was crumbling, piece by piece. And still, I didn't feel happy. Just steady. I'd taken back control, but control wasn't peace. One night, Jonah asked if I'd ever forgive them. I shook my head. "Forgiveness isn't what they want," I said quietly. "It's what they expect. I'm not giving them that." He didn't argue. He just nodded, as if he understood that some things couldn't be fixed, only survived. Outside, the street was silent. For the first time, the silence didn't scare me. It just meant I was finally alone on my own terms. I left the city without telling anyone and drove until the noise faded behind me. The ocean came into view like a promise I didn't know I'd been waiting for. I rented a small apartment above a cafe in a quiet coastal town. No one here knew my last name, and for the first time, I didn't need to hide behind another one. When I filled out the job form at a local bookstore, I wrote Harper Lang without hesitation. Seeing my name on that paper felt like reclaiming something they'd tried to take. Days passed gently. I worked, walked by the shore after my shifts, and spoke only when I wanted to. People were kind but didn't ask questions. I liked it that way. There was a calm rhythm in stacking books, greeting customers, and hearing the waves outside at night. After the investigation ended, the rest of the trust money finally came through. I didn't need most of it. So I sent part of it to organizations that helped women trapped in controlling families. Women who were told they couldn't manage their own lives. I didn't attach my name. I didn't need credit. I just wanted to turn something ugly into something that mattered. Sometimes I'd think of Jonah and the way he'd said, "You're free now." Maybe he was right. Freedom didn't feel like excitement. It felt quiet, steady, and a little lonely. But it was mine. One evening, I walked down to the water after closing the shop. The air smelled of salt and cold wind. I stood where the waves met the sand and watched the tide rise. The horizon looked endless, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small in front of it. I thought about that night, the folder, the whispers, the decision they made without me. I smiled faintly and whispered to the wind. They held a meeting about what to do with me. I held my own. The sea didn't answer, but I didn't need it to. I finally understood. Peace wasn't about forgetting. It was about standing on your own name and not flinching. So, what do you think? Was I right to walk away and take control of my life? Or should I have given them another chance? I really want to know your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear more stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.